Welcome to the Scandinavian MIND podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, sustainability and optimism at Copenhagen Fashion Week. We are recording from the Danish capital, taking the temperature of Nordics' premier fashion industry event. We are speaking to the designers and entrepreneurs that move the industry forward, and will also report from a new show concept that has arrived in the city. In this episode, we will hear from Sigurd Bank, founder and designer of Mfpen, and Gustav Kjellander and Emil Holmström, founders of Brixtol Textiles. We will talk about pushing the deadstock agenda forward, new material innovations, and how to be a responsible fashion brand in 2024. My name is Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian MIND, and I'm here together with my colleague Johan Magnusson, our senior editor. How are you, Johan?
Yeah, the correspondent is reporting again. It's trade fair season. It's not the time to become ill. You can and most likely will be that after next week, after Stockholm Design Week next week.
Quite a lot of people will fall down into the post-trade show blues, I'm sure of it. So we're both reporting from, as per usual, from our individual hotel rooms in the middle of the actual trade show. So we recorded this on Thursday morning. We've both been around town on various different locations during Wednesday, and this is what we'll talk about today in this episode. But just a note to say, we are both heading out to the SIF trade show after this recording to host our next beauty innovation talks. So nothing on the beauty innovation talks at SIF in this podcast. That will show up in the podcast feed in the weeks to come. Looking forward to that. So given that we're kind of covering the beauty scene in that upcoming episode, we will focus on what really is going down right now, the fashion week. You once spent some time out at the SIF trade show. I've been around town, and I thought we'd start with talking a little bit about the changing landscape of the trade show industry here in Copenhagen. So as we have reported on before, the big two competing trade shows, Revolver and SIF, joined forces. Was it a year ago now? This is the third edition, right?
Time flies, but yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So which kind of left a hole in the central of Copenhagen. So they've moved all the shows, all the exhibiting brands out to Bella Center, the fairgrounds outside of the city, which I generally think is a good thing. I think it's good for the industry that they consolidate all the, I think is it 1,200 brands or something. It's quite a lot, it was actually, it felt weird a year ago when I think it was the last time they held the two separate events, because there was so much empty space over at Bella Center. So it's nice that they filled the big halls there. But what has actually happened is, when space is left, something else comes in. So we reported earlier this week from a new show concept that I visited last night called Poet Concept. So Poet Concept is a multi-brand showroom. It's curated by a guy called Philip Holder, kind of an industry veteran. He used to work at SIF, and I think he's been very clear that this is not a replacement to Revolver. It's not a new trade show, but it has some of those qualities. I had a chance to go out there last night to see the space, and I gotta say, it really has a different type of vibe. Quite curated. A lot of British brands, I think, because Philip has a strong network there, and it felt like the brand mix really held together. Some really interesting upcycling brands, workwear, kind of not really fashion forward, but it felt really stylish and innovative. And last night they also held a special exhibition and show of Common Sweden, a wonderful Swedish menswear brand that we have reported on before.
Yeah, we've followed Common Sweden for the last few years, and they're also based in London now, right?
I believe so. I think definitely they have their biggest following internationally. I saw some awesome knitwear, some great 70s tailoring. Spoke to one of the founders, and apparently they're moving a big push out into Japan right now. So it's one of those kind of niche, wonderful menswear brands that we have in the Nordics that don't really cater to the Nordic market because they are a bit too niche, a bit too quirky perhaps, and I also think a bit too expensive for the mainstream customer. But it was really interesting to see the show, and I do wish Philip well. I know he had booked already the next season, so it seems like a concept that will live on. So again, it was a beautiful show space. It's one of the galleries next to the canals in the city, and a different type of vibe.
Yeah, and it's quite a sign of the times as well. For the Scandinavian brands, of course, Paris is huge, twice a year,
Yeah,
both menswear
yeah.
and women's wear. And there you have quite big trade shows, a few of them. And then you have all the showrooms. So uh, not all the brands fit into being in a trade fair, or they believe that they're not a brand to be at the trade fair. So, of course, when SIF grows, there will be room for individual showrooms, of course, here in Copenhagen, and a lot of brands they do have it. They're represented here, but also more curated, niched meeting places like Poet.
Yeah, for sure. And we've talked about it before. Funny you mentioned Paris because a lot of people I talk to are mentioning the all the events that are happening in Paris, and feels like it has grown so much stronger. The Common Sweden guys just arrived from Paris, where they said they are doing the majority of their business. So their activity here in Copenhagen is more of a representative kind, more of a kind of making a splash in their kind of home market, let's say, or the place where they grew up. They're from the south of Sweden, so they're pretty used to hanging out here in the Copenhagen, and it felt very social. Felt very social.
It also kind of proves the status for Copenhagen in the Nordics. It's the place to be, of course, and that's not a new thing, but it's improving and improving for every season. So it's
Mm.
not a coincidence that Common Sweden believes that it is important to be here, or that Jay Lindeberg is returning to the official show schedule. It's the place to be.
That's really interesting point, and uh, we should mention briefly there is of course news from the Swedish fashion industry. As a kind of opposite end of the pendulum, there's stuff happening in Copenhagen. In Sweden, there is a reshuffling of the fashion organizations, where the Swedish Trade Federation just recently announced that they are closing down the Swedish Fashion Council, led by Jenny Rosén and our former colleague, their creative director, Robin Douglas. So news came out just before we arrived here in Copenhagen that Lilia Sefa, the famous PR woman, kind of investor, investing in different fashion brands, also has been on the board of Swedish Fashion Council. She will somehow take ownership of Swedish Fashion Council and their activities. They have, as we know, run very interesting and successful incubator programs with brands like Rave Review and Hudakova and the likes. I wrote a few words on this in my weekly column. But I feel it's very tentative. I want to learn more before we try to find out what's happening there. I also met actually Robin at one of the shows that we're going to talk about next. Didn't get much info out of him, so it feels like everyone's kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, and we'll of course follow that closely. I guess the big question is to examine: is it good for the industry that a private investor owns the Swedish Fashion Council? But let's leave that for another show. All right, as I mentioned, I did go out to one of the shows. I went to visit the Mfpen show. It was in a cool art space, as per usual here in Copenhagen. There's always a cool art space where shows happening. I went to see the show to get a sense of the Fashion Week circuit.
Yeah, we've seen a few from that kind of generation of Danish brands, they've unfortunately went bankrupt, but Sigurd and MFN still standing strong, and more so than ever, if I'm correct. Or what was your feeling about the show and meeting Sigurd again? And
No, I was really fascinated by this, and as you mentioned, I think what's Sigurd is a really interesting character in the fashion system. We did we had a kind of close contact with Sigurd when we ran Scandinavian Man a few years ago when he was just starting out. I think he also did a show at Copenhagen Fashion Week pre-COVID, 18, 19, somewhere around there. And what's interesting with Sigurd is he is both a designer but also a true, you know, he rolls up his sleeves. He's a true grit entrepreneur, I would say. And I remember in the first few years, he did everything himself. So I think with little support of a girlfriend or something like that, or a sister or like a family member. He did everything himself. He designed it. He ordered the clothes. He packed it. He did it from his home. He went to all of the trade shows himself. But he got a lot of attention because he had this kind of cool, kind of oversized type of relaxed tailoring that he's still doing. And I think that's why he actually survived. He didn't do it like many other brands from that era. They hired like a team of 5 and 6 people, went, flew around trade shows, and costs can easily kind of get carried away. But it seems like he really has a sense of how to run this, and he wants to run this. He wants to work on this. He likes to work on his next collections. So that's why it was really interesting to see the show. As we mentioned, it was kind of vibrant space, very packed. There were, of course, some of the international crowds. We saw our friend Bruce Pask from Bird of Goodman was in the crowd. I also talked a little bit with Alec Leach, a very interesting author and fashion writer we have had on the Transformation Conference a couple of years ago. And Alec actually, he wrote a good story in his new newsletter about MFpen just a couple of months ago, talking about why they're doing things differently. And also that maybe that's why it sparked my curiosity to reconnect with Sigurd and talk about how they're doing, because Sigurd, MFpen, kind of an interesting, quirky menswear brand. No matter what you think of the style, I quite enjoy it, but it's also very, they're doing their own thing. They're not really innovating every season. I feel like they have cut out a really interesting niche, but it's all dead stock material. Like that, he really has implemented a fixed strategy, super focused on working with dead stock material. So that's what I wanted to talk to him about. And just a last note before we listen to my conversation with him: Sigurd is really is a character. When as a journalist, you have kind of a standard set of questions you ask. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? Why is it important to be at this event? And you'll hear his kind of deadpan answers. He is not easily impressed with anything that's happening around him. He is just very focused on doing the next thing, his sharpening his collection and really taking responsibility.
he's a creative.
Yeah, he's a creative, but he's also an entrepreneur, an operative. I would say like a sustainability operative, and he digs in. He does it himself. I think that's why he is impressive. So let's hear it now. This is Sigurd Bank, founder and designer of MFpen, recorded after their show yesterday in Copenhagen. All right, so I'm here with Sigurd Bank, the founder of MFpen, after the show here at Gallery Nikolai Wallner. Sigurd, talk to me about this collection.
It's a collection, a co-ed collection, like men's and women's, based on tailoring and tailoring silhouettes. Due to the fact that we saw so much dead stock, and the easiest for us to find is like suiting fabrics. And then like our inspiration, our background is like punk music and hardcore music, and then we try and reconceptualize, like the suiting into this concept, which I think is fun and makes the, it makes it more punk somehow that it's suiting, and like it's because we take ownership of something which is normally some, symbols of power, or what I mean, like bankers wear suits and ties, and but we take it into our context, and then we, I wouldn't say we make it punk, but like in a way we see it and style it, and the music and everything. That's yeah.
You're famous for using dead stock throughout the collection and throughout all the garments and the pieces. Talk about how that has developed when scaling the production, going from a big... I know when you began you were one-man show, now it's getting bigger. What's it like scaling the production using dead stock fabrics?
We need to buy more dead stock. And at the same time, we need more liquidity, because you need to stock up on all the dead stocks. Like every time you find something, you buy it, and then like there's 400 meters there, 600 meters there, and you just have to buy it for future collections. And then you have to, buy more and more and more. And then of course it's not easy just to find more, but then you look into different like alternative ways of producing clothing. Like we do coats, wool coats, in a collaboration with Mfpen.Gustav, where it's like 100% post-consumer wool, so it's like end-of-life knitwear that are respun into new yarn, and then they make it without use of chemicals or dyeing or anything. And the water is there's like so little use of water, because they just take sweaters and make it into new yarn and using the colors which is already in the sweater. Yeah, so we do that, which is like, it's not dead stock, but it's like very similar, right? Like it's even, you could say it's even better, because it's actually clothing which has had a lifetime of wear, and then it's being made into new yarns. And then, of course, we also use fabrics like tencel and like low impact fibers. So yeah, it's not 100% dead stock, but like we try, of course, to do as much dead stock as we can.
You get a lot of praise for this approach, designing smaller collections, really not trying to focus on overproduction, trying to stifle that. When you work because you're both an entrepreneur and a designer, and you take responsibility throughout the process. What's it like doing this? Do you think about the design first, or do you think about the responsibility first?
It's a constant process. Like you have an idea, let's make this kind of item, and then you try and find the fabric. If you cannot find the fabric, then we have like the hierarchy. Then we like, okay, we cannot find the denim who's like this. Okay, let's find a denim which is maybe like a tencel cotton, or like a recycled cotton, or you know what I mean? Like, because it's quite hard to find dead stock denim, because it's always just stock and not dead stock. It goes both ways, because a lot of times we find the fabric, and then you're seeing the fabric like, oh, this would be cool as a suit jacket, or this would be cool as a blouson or whatever, and then you sometimes you have an idea like, oh, I want to make this product, and then you have to find the fabric afterwards, if that makes sense. So sometimes the fabric comes first, so sometimes the design comes first.
Do you enjoy that process?
I enjoy finding fabrics and then imagining what we can use them for. But it's also a pain in the ass, because if you find a fabric, oh, this is amazing, but you only have 80 meters, then you cannot make a suit, because you can make 20 jackets and 20 trousers. So if we do that, we only make trousers instead of a suit. So you need more meters to make a suit, for example, because it's 2 items, whatever.
It's a packed show here today at the gallery. You've done a few seasons of Copenhagen Fashion Week now. What do you get out of doing the shows here?
I don't know. Like we did a show 4 years ago, or 5, I don't know. And that was just like super whatever. We were 2 guys doing it. Like we put up the lamps and everything, and like we didn't have hair and makeup. It was just, back then it was for fun, and it still is. But now it's more like, okay, let's do a fucking proper show. It's still like super low budget, and like half the casting is our friends, and but it's more proper now. And then I think for me, it's not so much what we gain from it. It was more like, I think it's just like, I think there's something romantic about fashion shows in a way. And the same idea, like when you see like old shows like Helmut or Magella, or like there's these like you don't remember old Magella lookbook, but you remember an old show, and the same way, like I think it's the same reason we only want to do this show. We don't want to do a show next time, because then shows become something which is just ephemeral, where it's just like disappears, and then on to the next one, and on to the next one. And we don't want to be a part of that, like hamster wheel, and we just want to do a show, and then we did a show, and then we get what we get. But like I think it's more like an internal thing, but like we just thought it would be fun to have a show, so let's have a show.
Looking forward, can you say anything that you're particularly excited about in the upcoming collections, or with the company or the brand?
No, and that's just simply because like we're not chasing the next big thing, or we're not doing like we don't work on collabs, and we don't. I think it's just we're just working, and it's like it's this constant process of like we, now we work on SS25, but it's more like we, it's like constant development. Like we always find fabrics, and we always, there's no plans, there's no like a 5-year business plan or anything. It's more like we just do our thing and trying to be happy, I guess. You know what I mean? Like have a good work environment and have a good, you know, yeah, just like be happy of what we do and be happy doing it.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that was Sigurd Bank, founder and designer of Mfpen. Okay, so while I was, scurrying around town, riding in super expensive Danish taxi cabs because of the currency situation here in the Scandinavia, you were out at SIF, the Copenhagen International Fashion Fairs, looking at the show there. So you won just an overall impression from the show at SIF, from your perspective.
Yeah, similar to when I went to Paris for Maison Obé. It's clear that the biggest ones will stand. They will remain, and they will show how important a trade fair can be. So I wouldn't say optimism, but it was clear that SIF is relevant and stands stronger than ever. And it's huge. And then you haven't even mentioned on the first floor where you have all the showrooms. You get lost there quite easily, and it's not easy to navigate. And they've also turned it into their own so-called city. So they call it SIF Village now. And it's clear that they've taken inspiration from other meeting places and improved the food offering and the lounge areas. It's not only a place where you do business, but it's also important to network, to eat, to have a glass of bubbles, or sit down in a couch.
Yeah, and that's obviously why we are going out there to host our own beauty innovation talks. It is an important meeting place in the industry. So what else did you see on kind of the fashion end of the show?
What happened to sustainability? One person said, if I look around here, even at the so-called contemporary menswear, womenswear brands, which they're all located in the same hall. If MFpen, for instance, would have showed there, they would have been there. And he said 5% of the brands here are sustainable or communicating that they're sustainable. And SIF and Copenhagen Fashion Week a few years ago have taken quite a serious steps towards improved sustainability in the fashion industry, and paved the way here. Certain requirements to show at the official schedule. And I haven't interviewed any SIF representative. I haven't spoke with them. So bear with me if they have super high-profile sustainability targets. I'm sure they do, because it's a huge company standing behind SIF. But it doesn't show. And if it doesn't show, then what's the point with it, So, again, quite tired of the lack of innovation and sustainability within the Nordic fashion scene. If you go to such a place, if you go to like a student show, then you will see upcycling and recycling and new material innovations, but that's not commercial. So the commercial brands, they still have a lot of work to do.
Well, I think it goes to show that the innovations will not come from the brands, and we've talked about this extensively in our platform before, and that's why we are covering new technologies, we're covering shifts in the fashion system, we're covering regulation. It's really at that level that we're going to see the industry push for a change, and obviously we'll get back to those issues in the show. But thank you for those observations. There are, though, a few glimpses of hope in this sea of fashion brands. You talked to one of our Swedish brands, Brixtol Textiles, which has been present at the Transformation Conference. They were with us in Helsinki last year. Why did you decide to talk to Brixtol?
Just like all the emerging brands, or almost all the emerging brands, they're facing a tough situation now with the retail and the e-tail or online. It's a huge competition, and a lot of stores are, of course, closing down. And post-COVID, we had a situation, or during COVID and right after COVID, we had a situation where online was huge. And now also online, they can't face those same numbers. So they're also having a tough time, the major Nordic online outlets. So, but Brixtol is important to follow because they have paved the way for material innovations and recycling, and to show that also when you're an emerging and growing brand, it comes with a lot of costs, and when you expand, and that's why we've seen several Danish brands went bankrupt the last few years. But Brixtol is a clear example that you can be like a good example, but still keep on growing to an international audience.
All right, let's hear it. Here's Gustav Kjellander and Emil Holmström, the founders of Brixtol Textiles.
We're here to present Brixtol Textiles Fall/Winter 2024 collection and some highlights from it.
Can you share any highlights?
Of course we can. No, but as our name implies, Brixtol Textiles, we focus a lot on the fabrics we use. We work a lot with sustainability and have been doing that for many years. So we always search for new types of sustainable materials. We continue working with some of the things we've been doing in previous seasons, which for instance is like in our buttons, metal buttons, we have residue from production of Finnish surgical instruments, and then as well like buttons made from milk protein, but that we've been having in previous years as well. For us this season, it's a new wool we found, or that we have like developed, which is 50 recycled wool, 50 recycled polyester, which for us we have been developing because we have a real big demand due to like price increases to find also more available price points for consumers to buy our wool coats.
And the feel of it is almost like cashmere.
Yeah, it's a really nice hand feel. I mean, that has always been really important to us. I mean, it always needs to be the fabric needs to have a long lasting, I mean, so lifespan. And then also like a good quality, so you can never like compromise with that.
You've been here at SIF many times. You also run your own agency. What are your feelings about this edition?
This edition? No, but it's super nice. I mean, this is the second edition where they have only one fair in Copenhagen instead of two fairs, which everybody has been talking about for the last 20 years. So it's super nice that it's only one venue, and so far it's been quite good traffic.
And you and your colleagues have also been in Paris and to other events. How is the feeling from the industry, the buyers, and are they optimistic that maybe this year it's gonna turn around? And
well, the fashion industry is like always optimistic. I mean, you need to be optimistic to be in this business, but I would say that they are more hesitant in a way. I mean, which you need to be. So, I mean, optimistic but still hesitant, and I mean, don't want to take big risk.
Do you need to adapt your collections, like you mentioned, with this wool fabric, in order to, come into their stores? And
I mean, for sure. I mean, because in the end, someone needs to buy it out from the store, and I mean, this financial situation has like affected us all, and especially like the consumers. So I mean, the stores really see a big demand on more like well-priced products, where that's a big focus for us.
If we're looking for Brixtol Textiles for 2024, what do you have coming?
In general, you mean what we have coming? I mean, right now, just like finalizing this collection, selling it, and then creating the Spring/Summer 25. But then, also
We're gonna exhibit again in Paris, and we have a new collection that's gonna be launched at Bon Marché once again in Paris, and then hopefully we're gonna have an event in Paris at the Swedish embassy. We will have our textile scholarship, so hopefully we're gonna have that on midsummer actually.
And if I know you right, you will also continue to look for material innovations.
For sure.
All right, that was Gustav Kjellander and Emil Holmström, the founders of Brixtol Textiles. All right, Johan, thank you for your report from SIF. I'm looking forward to jumping into a car and getting out there myself after this recording. So before we go, just a note to say that we will be reconvening our virtual creativity live sessions at the Lynk & Co showroom in Stockholm. Next session will happen on February 21st. So 3 weeks from now, if you follow our newsletter, visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter. You will be able to sign up to that event. Really exciting. It will go on for 3 more sessions during spring. We're really happy about that collaboration. Johan, anything you look forward to next week? Yeah, there's a Fashion Week trade happening. There's Stockholm Design Week. It's not over yet, this trade show season.
I look forward to relax afterwards and to stay healthy, and I wish you the same, because it's intense now. But it's the same procedure once a year, every year.
Fair enough. Thanks for listening to the Scandinavian Mind podcast. Do sign up to our various newsletters. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter or scandinavianmind.com/beauty innovation, not to miss out on any of our important content and upcoming events. Till next time, goodbye.
Bye.